be it in ancient Rome, where the government recognized prostitutes, to the Wild West, where infamous prostitutes like Poker Alice ran taverns and brothels, or even in Japan during the Edo period, where there were pleasure houses. Notably, even as recent as 80 years ago during the Second World War, governments got involved by establishing military brothels to help mitigate sexual violence against the civilian population. In some countries today, prostitution is legal, whereas others still grapple with the issue. On today's episode, we delve into the law and history of the world's oldest profession. We see the works of Greek historian Herodotus talking about sacred prostitution. Sumerian records dating up to 2400 BCE are some of the earliest mentions of prostitution as a trade. They depict a temple brothel in the city of Uruk dedicated to the goddess Ishtar, the goddess of pleasure, sex, and prostitution. Over in the Middle East, there are mentions of prostitution. The Hebrew Bible, for instance, in the book of Genesis, makes mention of prostitutes in the story of Judah and Tamar. Also in the book of Joshua, there is mention of the prostitute known as Rahab, whose services Joshua utilized as a spy to get vital information about the city. This was only made possible because she was a favorite of the nobility in the city and therefore had access to important information. In South America, the Aztecs made use of houses known as Xihuacali. In these houses, known as Xihuacali, prostitution was permitted both by political and religious leaders. The houses would overlook a statue of Tlazoltotl, the Aztec goddess of fertility and the adulteral. We jump forward to the Middle Ages, where prostitution was tolerated among the religious authorities because it was believed that prostitution helped stem the tides of bigger evils such as rape, masturbation, and sodomy. Augustine of Hippo, also known as Saint Augustine, is quoted saying, "If ever prostitution shall be abolished, the world would fall into unrest because of vices caused by lust." After the collapse of the Eastern and Western Roman empires, the profession fell into a decline with the advent of campaigns against slavery, especially with most prostitutes being slaves. However, the profession slowly crept back into public life, with most local authorities opting to turn a blind eye but instituting laws and regulations to prevent both male and female prostitutes carrying out their businesses in public places. A snapshot of this is seen in London, where brothels in South were run by the Bishop of Winchester. This was a pragmatic step for two reasons. Firstly, it prevented prostitution from being carried out in other locations, thereby stemming its spread, and it allowed the authorities to have a tight lid and control over the parties participating in the trade. The 16th to 19th centuries led to another shift in attitudes towards the profession, with the spread of global exploration led by the likes of Christopher Columbus also resulted in the spread of global diseases. For instance, there was an outbreak of syphilis in the region of Naples, which rapidly spread across the European subcontinent. There's also a religious reformation which further negated the public's attitude towards the profession, with it being deemed as evil and a sin. Now we have a look at some bizarre laws on prostitution. Did you know that although Chapter 18(2) of the Constitution of Bangladesh states that the state shall endeavor to prevent prostitution and gambling, there are 20 legally licensed prostitute villages in the country. However, it is important to note that the country has laws that criminalize child prostitution, forced prostitution, as well as human trafficking. Further, in the state of New York, up until 2014, walking with multiple condoms could get you arrested on suspicion of prostitution. This was courtesy of a New York state policy that has since been repealed. Understanding the history of prostitution sheds a light on the societal attitudes, cultures, and forces that have shaped the profession. It is by examining the past that we can better navigate the present and establish a more equitable future.